Hello everyone, welcome back. In task 2, we're going to be discussing the complementary nature of problem-based learning and teaching problem-solving skills to your students. These two processes truly are the perfect pair. But for the most part, when people hear the word problem, they have one of three very strong reactions. Some people have to fight the urge to run for the hills, or maybe they don't fight it and just take off. Others will begrudgingly buckle down and they try to find solutions, but they would rather be doing just about anything else. Then there's that third group that get an adrenaline rush from the perceived challenge of conquering something. If you fall into that first category, please stick around. The mountains are beautiful, but they will still be there when we get done. If you find yourself falling more into that second characterization, not to worry. You'll get to select a subtopic that will interest you and hopefully make this a pleasant experience. For those of you in that last category, you will love this. It will be as challenging as you want it to be, and it will let you develop your skills as a problem-based learning instructor and problem solver as much as you could possibly hope. Throughout this course, you're going to hear the word problem a lot. Problem solving, problem-based learning, planning for problematic behavior, planning for problematic questions, and the list goes on and on and on. So just be prepared. I told you earlier that problem-based learning and problem-solving skills really are the perfect pair. The complementary characteristics bring a cohesive richness to your lesson plans. The main attraction to both of these processes is that they use questions to ignite the learning process. We will discuss later in the video how using authentic problems plays upon students' curious nature to really engage them in the learning process. This pair also has the dynamite quality of being appropriate for all ages and content areas, and as all of us teachers know, that can be hard to find. But with a little differentiation and planning for your specific students and classroom dynamics, learning environments, and learning styles, you can expect all students to be more engaged and experience more meaningful learning. This pair also shares the quality of embracing change. As we work through how to plan effective and engaging lessons with problem-based learning, you as an educator will find yourself needing to embrace different planning procedures and practices, the inclusion of alternative assessments, maybe even changing your learning environment and the expectations you have for student behavior and their performance. With problem solving, we recognize the need for change to create an appropriate and well thought out solution. And we're going to be working on both of those things, but it is imperative that you embrace change and keep an open mind. Lastly, this pair depends upon being reflective in your practice of planning problem-based learning lessons and of the problem-solving processes that both you and your students will go through to have a successful lesson. As we think about how we solve a problem, it generally begins with a question. How am I already out of time? How can I engage my students? Why do my students grumble every day when entering and leaving my classroom? Why do I grumble when students enter and leave my classroom? But most importantly, how can I make all of our time more engaging, enjoyable, and effective? The process of planning a problem-based learning lesson will require some skillful problem solving on your part, and we'll be developing this skill by asking questions about how your students will benefit, engage, and master different content and skills. Problem-based learning utilizes students' inquisitive nature to engage them in meaningful learning. Instead of dreading your student questions, especially those that don't fit into our lesson plans, we can offer students an equally engaging problem that is aligned to our planned objective. One important consideration when planning a problem-solving lesson using problem-based learning is that even though students are generally taught that problem solving is a step-by-step process. First, we do this. Second, we do that. Third, we're going to do this, and so on and so on. We really need to revise that way of thinking. Both planning problem-based learning instruction and solving an authentic problem actually tend to be more non-linear. We may enter into the process at any point. Real world, or as we'll refer to them, ill-defined and authentic problems rarely allow us to start at step 1 and sequentially work our way down to step 7 and end up with a nice, tidy conclusion. Sometimes we have to go backwards. Other times side to side. Maybe you even have to jump around a little bit due to the resources you have available at any given time. Often individuals get stumped and abandon their efforts to solve a problem when it isn't nice and tidy and fit into this rigid and sequential model. This is not just a characteristic of our students' problem-solving abilities, but we as educators tend to do the same thing when we're planning instruction. So the first step is going to be to throw out the idea that you'll be able to plan effective lessons using problem-based learning using only that linear model. You're going to have to learn to be flexible. I believe any teacher that has ever actually conversed with a student would agree that students are curious by nature. Now, I'll admit, I am one of the most curious people I have ever encountered. My inner dialogue tends to sound like I'm conversing with a very, very inquisitive toddler. It's important to note that not all students or people are going to be as curious as I am, but people are naturally curious to varying degrees. Both planning problem-based learning lessons and using problem-solving skills are benefited by us utilizing that curious nature rather than fighting it. Stop for a moment and ask yourselves, have you ever been in a class or professional development course and had a question pop into your head? You might not have asked it, but for a moment, or in my case, the rest of the course or day, you ponder this question. This happens to our students oftentimes more frequently than it does to us. This powerful thought process of curiosity gives us a foundation to build upon student interest and encourage them to construct their own knowledge. When curiosity is coupled with ill-defined and authentic problems, we enter this twilight zone. Not only are students engaged by an interesting problem, but they are fueled to discover a possible solution. And we throw in the added benefit of allowing our students opportunities to use their problem-solving skills on something that matters, something that they can see actually benefiting them or affecting them. When we consider authentic problems, most of the time, there are no definitive answers. Yes, no, right, and wrong are not comprehensive enough. But then again, not many problems we face in life are. Students need exposure to this phenomenon so that they're prepared when life throws them a curveball and black and white answers are nowhere to be found. When teachers plan this trifecta, we can expect meaningful learning to occur and skill development to soar. The dynamite quality of being appropriate for all content areas makes learning to plan your lessons in this way vital. As teachers, we spend an unreal amount of time planning lessons. Some classes require different instructional approaches, and what works for one might not work for another. And although this is true, problem-based learning and problem-solving skills have a type of immunity to this. Differentiation is built into the framework and is applicable to all content areas, all students, and all classes. Now, I'm a science teacher, so it doesn't take a lot of work for me to find a problem of interest for students to solve. In fact, the study of science can be summarized by centuries of solving problems that affect our daily lives. However, these two processes can be utilized in every area. For example, in language arts class, you could plan a lesson that presents a task or problem to your students such as this one. You need to write a letter to your supervisor to issue a formal complaint against a colleague. The letter needs to be professional in nature, and the language you use needs to reflect that. How will you use adjectives in your recounting of events to present the issue in a professional yet accurate manner? For those math instructors, you might include a problem or scenario such as this. You've just been offered a contracted job, not salaried. Upon completion of the project, you'll receive a lump sum for commission. Taxes will not be withheld. How will you plan for and determine how much you'll owe in taxes, and how will you ensure that you'll be able to pay your taxes in full when you file? History teachers might present a problem similar to this example. American history has been littered with issues regarding the protection or lack thereof of human rights. What is a human rights issue Americans are facing today, and how can we learn from the successes and failures of our past to better correct the infraction? A science teacher might present the position of many people who believe that gene editing could eradicate diseases caused by genetic mutation. Is it plausible and cost-effective to implement and mandate that all embryos undergo genetic testing and treatment if necessary? How would you justify your position to expecting parents? The complementary characteristics of planning a problem-based learning lesson and the problem-solving processes are not unique to certain individuals or areas of study. As you can see, each subject has a wealth of interesting questions that challenge us as educators to plan lessons that will translate across content boundaries and develop the skills of students they desperately need to succeed after they leave our schools. Lastly, being a reflective practitioner is vital to both developing problem-solving skills and planning effective problem-based learning experiences. Both require that we carve out time to look back at the changes we have made and the changes we still need to embrace to improve our abilities at both. Each require that we look beyond the familiar solutions and teaching practices so that we might grow as educators and as individuals. I encourage you to use and have a self-reflection journal as you complete the remainder of this course. Sometimes it's hard to see how far we've come and what all we have accomplished until we look back at our thoughts and attitudes and practices and see how they've evolved from the beginning to the very end. This journal will not be submitted or shared. It will be completely private. It's strictly for your personal use and to be used at your discretion. Thank you for your time and happy planning.